All right, let's dive into something fundamental to, well, all life on Earth. It's a process that's happening all around us, all the time, even if we don't notice it. The planet's amazing, essential recycling systems. We're going to explore how it all works. So let's start with a pretty big question. What actually happens when a plant, an animal, or any living thing dies? It might feel like the end of the story, but from a scientific point of view, it's anything but. Because in nature's playbook, death is just a transformation. It's really the beginning of a brand new journey for all the materials that made up that life. It's the moment all those building blocks get handed back to the ecosystem to be used all over again. So who's responsible for this incredible process? Well, let's meet the planet's unsung heroes. I'm talking about nature's cleanup crew. These guys are the real engine behind all the recycling that happens on Earth. And the job they do is called decomposition. It's the absolutely essential process of breaking down dead organic stuff into simpler substances. Seriously, think about it. Without this, our planet would just be piled high with dead matter, and all the building blocks of life would be locked away forever. So who or what is on this crew? We're talking mainly about decomposing bacteria and fungi. They're the master recyclers. Their whole job is to break down dead organisms and waste products. And in doing so, they return vital minerals and nutrients to the soil. And as they work, they're also breathing in their own way, releasing carbon dioxide back into the environment, which is the perfect starting point for our next big cycle. And that brings us to the currency of life itself, carbon. It's the fundamental element, the absolute backbone of every protein, fat, and carbohydrate in every single living cell. Now, just pause and think about this for a second. The actual carbon atoms that make up your body right now have been on an epic journey. They've been part of plants, they've been inside other animals, they've been floating around in the atmosphere. You are literally made of recycled materials. So how does this incredible cycle actually work? Let's break it down. First, carbon dioxide gets into the atmosphere, either from living things breathing it out or from things burning. Step 2, plants, the planet's amazing producers, grab that CO2 from the air and use it to make food through photosynthesis. Third, animals come along and eat those plants, and that carbon becomes a part of them. And finally, when everything dies, our cleanup crew gets back to work, breaking it all down and releasing that carbon right back where it started. And what's really cool is how carbon is constantly changing its chemical outfit. During photosynthesis, it goes from being a gas, carbon dioxide, into a sugar, glucose. Then, through respiration, that glucose gets used for energy and the carbon gets released back out as carbon dioxide. It's this perfect, continuous chemical swap. But hey, carbon isn't the only element on a constant world tour. Next up is nitrogen, and it's an absolutely essential ingredient for all proteins. The building blocks that let every living thing grow and repair itself. Okay, get ready for a mind-blowing number. 78%. That's right. Nearly 4/5 of the air you're breathing right now is pure nitrogen gas. But, and this is a big but, there's a catch. It's so stable and unreactive that plants and animals can't just breathe it in and use it. It has to be fixed, converted into a usable form first. So how does this fixing happen? Well, it's a bit more of a complicated dance than the carbon cycle. It all starts when nitrogen gas gets zapped by the massive energy of a lightning strike, or much more often, it's handled by special bacteria in the soil. Then, other bacteria turn that into nitrates, which is the form plants can actually use. When organisms die, decomposers return the nitrogen to the soil. And finally, yet another group of bacteria can turn it all back into nitrogen gas, completing the whole loop. And this really shows you a key difference between how nature works and how humans have intervened. Nature has its tools, lightning, and these incredible specialized bacteria. We humans, on the other hand, figured out the industrial Haber process, which lets us create artificial fertilizers and basically supercharge the amount of usable nitrogen available for growing food. Now for our final cycle. And honestly, none of the others could work without it. Let's talk about water. It's the planet's engine, the universal solvent that makes all of this possible. You probably remember the water cycle. It's this constant, non-stop movement of water all over the planet. Energy from the sun kicks things off with evaporation, turning liquid water into vapor. That vapor rises, it cools, and it condenses to form clouds. Eventually, you get precipitation, rain, snow, you name it. And it's not just coming from oceans. Plants are in on the action too, releasing water vapor from their leaves in a process called transpiration. So, this natural cycle is fantastic at giving us fresh drinking water. But what happens when there just isn't enough rain? Or what if the only water around you is the salty ocean? Well, that's where we humans intervene again with something called desalination. You're looking at the two main methods here. Distillation is pretty simple. You boil seawater, collect the pure water vapor, and let it cool down, leaving the salt behind. It works, but man, it uses a ton of energy. The other way is reverse osmosis, where you use crazy high pressure to literally squeeze water molecules through a special filter that salt can't get through. It's a really clever way of getting the fresh water we need. Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. We've looked at carbon, we've looked at nitrogen, we've looked at water. And sure, they each have their own journey, but they are all part of one giant, interconnected system. Carbon, nitrogen, water. These are the absolute key ingredients for life as we know it. And they never sit still. They're constantly moving, constantly changing form, and cycling through every part of our ecosystem, living and non-living. And this is the most beautiful part of the whole story. In these natural cycles, there is no such thing as waste. Everything gets reused. Everything is recycled. It's a perfectly efficient design. Our source material from BBC Bitesize sums it up perfectly. Atoms exist in different forms or compounds at different times in history and cycle between them. That's the whole idea right there. The very stuff that makes up the universe is just borrowing different forms for a little while before moving on to the next. Which leaves us with a final and pretty crucial question to think about. Our world, our very existence, runs on these perfect, unbroken loops. So what are the consequences if our own actions start to break them?